In this animation, we'll take a look at the concept of the data model. Now, the data model is basically the structure into which your records are extracted. So it's the structure of all the fields and all the tables that you have in an extracted record. The main advantage of the data model is that it's actually reusable, meaning you can set or create a data model for a specific format and maybe use multiple templates that refer to this data model, meaning they will all be compatible together. On the other hand, if you're presented with a data model that is 100% compatible with an existing system, such as an ERP or an EDM, then you don't have to worry about renaming your fields and setting the data types. It's all done. Now, you may be wondering how to use a data model. Well, it's super simple. The data model is simply a file containing that structure, and all we need to do is to import that data model file into our data mapping configuration in order to be able to use it. So now when we import the data model, it appears in the data model pane and we can see all the fields. And to the left of the field, we can also see which type it's supposed to be, whether it's a string, a currency, a date, etc. Now here's the thing, once you import a data model, you can actually modify it. You do have the possibility of deleting, adding fields, changing their type when you do the extraction. So it's not a read-only system, it is actually just a shortcut to getting the proper structure inside of your data mapping configuration or your template. So once we have our data model imported and we have all the fields listed, all we need to do is to extract the information, and that's done simply via drag and drop. Now, if you want to extract multiple fields, you can do that if you are using something like a database or an XML file. Now, if you want to extract multiple fields inside of a tabular data type or an XML, you can simply select all the fields and drag them. Now, depending on where exactly you drag them, they'll react a bit differently. So let's drag it directly onto the first field ID. What this does here is that it takes the number of fields you have and it kind of overwrites the values inside of the data model one after the other. Now here's the thing, in my data model, the first name and last name are inverted. So if you have something like that, just a small correction to do, it's very easy. You just override the individual fields. It won't create duplicate extractions or anything complicated. It'll simply fix the extractions that you have. Now, if your data sample have fields that are named the same way as the imported data model, the simpler thing is to drag them inside of the record table itself, not directly on a field. When you do this, the data mapper module automatically matches all the fields of the same name, and it adds any field that's not already present. So the total is added because it wasn't part of it, and then the tax total is also added because it doesn't have exactly the same name. So what we can do is just, again, do the correction. So the data model can also contain detail tables, nested tables, and those are used in pretty much the same way. You can simply drag into the detail table to extract. However, just like a normal data mapping, you need to have a loop before you can extract detail lines. So once you have a loop, you can just select everything and drag it into the detail table. And that's it. Now you can actually edit a data model directly from the interface here, directly from the data model pane. You can right-click anywhere and it'll give you a menu depending on where you are exactly. So if I right-click inside of the record itself, I can add a field or I can add a table. Adding a field, we'll simply add it at the end with no extraction. And then adding a table simply adds the table with no fields inside of it, and then you can add fields inside the table. So the data model pane kind of acts as a data model editor. If you create a new data mapping configuration with nothing in it and your data model pane is empty, you can create the whole thing here and then export it. And as you may recall, the data model has nothing to do with the type of data that you have. So whether you do it for an XML, a CSV, a PDF, it doesn't matter. The data model doesn't care about where the data comes from. It's separated from that. So now I've loaded a PDF file to show you how PDF and text files react with the data model. Because PDF and text files don't have field names, they only have areas from which you extract data, it's a bit more useful to have a data model, especially with the right field names. When extracting data from a PDF or text, you do have to do one line at a time or one field at a time, because if you select, let's say, the whole address here, and you try to extract that into your address on the right, it's only going to do one field. Even if you split it, it's going to create different fields using that. So you can't really do a lot of easy select everything and transfer just like you can in XML or tabular data. So let's extract a couple of lines. So basically you do your extractions kind of as usual, but instead of having to rename the fields after, you can just drag and drop into existing fields. Now here's the one thing about data models versus extracting. In our PDF, we don't have first name, last name. We just have the full name, so that's why I extracted it into there. So what happens if inside of the data model you have fields that aren't filled? It doesn't really matter. They both act as empty fields, both inside the data mapper and the designer module. It won't cause any errors if the fields are not filled. So this is it for the use of a data model inside of the data mapper application. I won't show you how to do it inside of the designer because it's actually just the same thing. You import a data model. The only thing is in designer, if you import a data model, it doesn't have any data by default unless you have a data mapping configuration loaded as usual. But even if the fields are empty, you can still drag them onto your template so that the scripts are created and the placeholders are created so that eventually when you have the data, they'll just fill in directly, assuming you use the same data model.